How you going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of COVID Convos, where we have real conversations with real people about what well-being looks like in a time of a pandemic. My name's Simon, and I've also got the other two regular hosts. Kesh, how are you, Kesh?
Doing all right, man.
That's great to hear. Good to see you. And Griggsy over in Belgium. How are you, Griggsy?
Yeah, really good, mate. 5 a.m. here, so not full of beans as I might usually be, but I'm looking forward to this convo.
Not a morning person, Griggsy. It's a tough time of day for anybody, though.
No, I'm all right. I'm all right. Don't you worry. We'll get right into this.
Awesome. And we've got a special guest for today's episodes. Now, her name is Pamela, and she's coming from all the way in Lima. And I'm just going to leave it at that because I'm not even going to try to attempt her surname after a couple of conversations we've had with other guest surname recently. How are you, Pamela?
Very good, thank you. My name is Pamela Nunez del Prado, and that's why he couldn't say my last name. Nice to meet you.
You too.
See you all.
Thanks
It
for that.
just sounds so much better when she says it,
Yeah.
right? Like I say it, and I sound like such an idiot, right? But she says it, and it sounds like the most beautiful thing in the world.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. No one wants to hear me try and say it, so thanks again, Pamela.
You're welcome.
Great to see you. Thanks for joining us. Would you mind just taking a minute or two to sort of introduce yourself a bit more fully and sort of your background and interests and that sort of thing?
Yeah, of course. Well, my name is Pamela, as I told you. I am a clinical psychologist. I did my master's degree in Melbourne Uni, in applied positive psychology. I worked for a decade as a research professor in the university here in Lima. I used to teach stats and advanced research. And well, now I'm not really doing that. I decided not to work in the university anymore. I'm still working as a researcher in the area of post-traumatic growth. But I am only working with patients and groups right now as a clinical psychologist. Well, now I'm doing that online. But yeah, that's me. And yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary of what I do, I think. Yeah.
Pamela, I've got to ask, this normally wouldn't be our first question, but do you like statistics?
I do. They're really sexy.
Thank you, right? I love statistics. I don't understand this question, this aversion. Like, I'm with you, sister. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't get it, so that's all right, but we'll move on.
Yeah.
Well, I used to hate math, and I had a lot of problems with understanding these kind of things. But when I first started studying psychology, the idea of applying this kind of maths into real people and trying to understand like variables and constructs and what's going on with people was really a useful tool. So that's why I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I think people get stuck on the mathematics, and like I'm the same. I'm not a mathematical brain, but statistics tell stories, right? They're narratives. It's not numbers. Well, there's numbers involved, but the numbers are the least part of the story, I think.
And the best part of knowing that is that when I read research, I know when when someone asseverates something about something, I know it's not true, and it made me really skeptical at the same time. So it's always about making stories, and that's something I really love.
I think it's so important too. I'm actually glad that you asked this question now, Griggsy, right? Because having that kind of background, understanding statistics, being able to read academic papers, understanding what those values mean, like what is a p-value, what is it actually saying? Because there is so much data that is getting chucked in our faces. We see so many graphs right now. You know, people talking about logarithmic scales and exponential growth. And for most people, because they have this aversion to statistics or the way that the language that science is written in, they don't understand what those things mean, right? And they get confused. And you can't pick apart good information from bad information.
Look, for example, what's happening with the COVID-19. So what we've seen is that, for example, places like Italy have 13% of the people are dying. That doesn't make sense. But that's because they are not making people do not understand that. That's why the sample is not, how do I say this? It's not, they are not taking the test as they should.
Mm.
That's why it seems inflated. That's why it seems like so many people is dying, for example. And people do not know that. It's just about, you know, having this, like, the information to understand that kind of stats, to make, to understand what's really going on and why people get really scared.
Pamela, you mentioned something, I don't mean to steer away from stats because, yeah, I don't know if I agree that it's sexy, but it is interesting. I'm probably somewhere between you guys and Griggsy. But you mentioned post-traumatic growth a minute ago, which is an interest of mine. But would you mind sort of just explaining that to people in the audience who may not be aware of that concept?
Yeah, of course. Post-traumatic growth could be defined as the power of transformation that come from a crisis or a trauma. So when you go through a process of trauma, sometimes it's possible to reevaluate some aspects of your life, meaning your relationships, meaning your spiritual self, maybe thinking about new possibilities. So it's reevaluating everything and seeing everything, seeing the world and yourself and the relationship between you and yourself in a different way. So people think that when they go through a crisis or they go through trauma, the most probable thing is that they will develop a disorder such as post-traumatic stress or something like that, depression, or any anxiety disorder. But according to, I think it's been like 30 years, because this variable, the post-traumatic growth, has been studying for the last 30 years approximately. Approximately 88% of the population, this is an approximation, go through a process of post-traumatic growth. So it's something that is really common, and it's part of who we are at the same time. We are always changing. We are always reevaluating things at the same time. Yeah.
Also. It sounds like something that's very, very relevant to what's happening right now, Pamela. Have you got any plans to I guess research or investigate what's happening and how that relates to post-traumatic growth?
Well, right now I'm working with another type of trauma. I don't know if you know, but in Peru, we are every year we have natural disasters. There is this phenomenon called El Niño that makes how do I say this? There's a lot of floods, like huge floods, and a lot of people die, lose everything. Yeah. So I've been working with that right now, and I'm still analyzing the data. I'm still doing the interventions because I think it was on January that there were 2 important floods in Cusco, and a lot of people not only passed away but lost everything. So I'm working with that right now. I'm not really planning on doing something with post-traumatic growth right now, but I'm doing interventions in post-traumatic growth. I'm not doing the research yet because I don't have enough tools to do it yet, but I'm doing interventions on it online. Yeah.
Let's dig into that, because that's my question. One of the things that we're discovering as we go through these conversations is COVID-19 is not the only thing that is going on for people. Like, you know, Australia just came out of our worst bushfire season ever. We were talking to Denise from Chile, and they're going through a bit of a social uprising at the moment. Different countries are already dealing with a bunch of different threats that have caused a lot of trauma, and now this is hit. So like Peru is experiencing the same. I'm wondering, I guess my question is, in a broader sense, how is everything that you've learned applying right now to COVID-19 in the context of Peru and everything that you do and see on a daily basis?
Okay. Everything is changing right now, not only for myself. Well, what I'm trying to do right now, I'm doing some interventions specifically with the children's. Well, I'm going to start doing an intervention with the children's hospital. So I've been a volunteer for the children's hospital for maybe 7 years now or more. No, probably more. So one of the things we are planning with the research group and also with Denise is doing, how do I say this? Oh my God. So I'm going to do like counseling sessions with the nurses. So we are planning a big event, online event, so I can help them learn about a trauma kit. And because everyone here is so scared and nobody understands how to deal with anxiety. So what I'm trying to do is I'm doing free sessions with personnel that works in the health system. At the same time, we're doing this like counseling sessions, like collectively. I don't know how to say it. Just forgot the word in English. Sorry.
Yeah.
And well, online on my Facebook, I'm trying to help my friends. So the other day, I just post something like, "Okay, guys, if you want to learn about mindfulness, compassion, and self-compassion, I will make an online, like on live. How do you say when you do a live session?
Yeah, like a Facebook live session.
Like that,
Yeah.
So on Thursday, I'm gonna make a live session on Facebook, and I thought only 5 people were interested. I have 126 people that are gonna see my show. So I'm just trying to help as I can. Also, I'm trying to get some money for the parents inside the children's hospital because they don't have enough money for the medicines, and all the volunteer work has been shut down. So yeah, that's how I'm trying to manage. And at the same time, I'm trying to work. So I have been working with some adult patients. I usually work with children. But I'm working with adults right now online because I cannot really work with children online. So yeah, that's what I'm doing right now and how I'm trying to deal and cope with everything that's happening. I think being compassionate gives me helps with my own anxiety. Okay.
Pamela, I was going to ask, with your interventions, sounds really interesting. Do you, with post-traumatic growth interventions, do you focus on implementing them before, during, or after the traumatic experience? I'm guessing it's more after. Is that right?
Well, in the case of floods, yeah, I've been doing after. But now that I'm working, for example, with these interventions within the children's hospital, I'm trying to teach people about post-traumatic growth. And I am not really aware at the same time if they are going through the crisis or it's before or it's after. Because if I'm talking with parents, for example, obviously we're talking about after. But in the case of nurses, for example, I think I'm trying to teach them learning about post-traumatic growth helps you to be more resilient at the same time. So, when you just start learning about, okay, what I have learned about this experience or what I could learn about this crisis, having the willingness to think about something, I think helps. Because how do I say this? Okay, your mind always is going through thoughts. There are a lot of thoughts happening all the way, and these thoughts come automatically. But when you give a parameter to the person to think about something, it can liberate your own mind from these negative thoughts that are always happening. I'm not sure if I'm explaining myself greatly. Is that okay? Do it.
I think, yeah, I get it. No, like the post-traumatic growth gives them another way of thinking about it, right? Like, yeah. I want to ask a little bit more. Like, I've got a couple of questions, but the very first one is working with post-traumatic growth. What are some of the fundamental things that I guess need to happen, or people go through? What enables post-traumatic growth?
Oh, okay. What enables the post-traumatic growth? Well, firstly, of course, relationships. I think the importance of relationships and significant bonds in your life will make you more. It will make more probable the possibility of developing post-traumatic growth. For example, I made a research. I think it was a year ago, that I tried to see the relationship between post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic growth, and at the same time evaluate the kind of parenting that you received. So what I thought is that when you go through a crisis like a trauma, for example, of Lima phenomenon, the relationship between post-traumatic growth and post-traumatic stress it seems to be when you have a low, a low strength-based parenting. It seems that you have to have high stress to go through post-traumatic growth, but if there is too much stress, the relationship is gonna be curvilinear. So at some point, you are not going to be able to grow. So that's important, for example, parenting. If you have medium strength-based parenting, it seems that it goes to a threshold. There is a maximum that you can go, and that's it. But if you had like a high strength-based parenting, for example, the relationship is linear, so it doesn't matter how much stress did you went through. It will always be possible to develop post-traumatic growth.
Pamela, I'm thinking about, I suppose, getting back to Griggsy's question about whether it's before the trauma, during the trauma, or after the trauma, that you can have interventions. And I think it's probably all three for me. And I think definitely, if nothing else, it's good for people to be aware of the concept of post-traumatic growth, even if they haven't been through a trauma or looking down the barrel of a trauma. Because I think in our culture, at least, the more common construct is post-traumatic stress, and people seem quite familiar with that. But knowing that there's a flip side to the coin is a valuable thing for people to know about. But have you got any more sort of practical tips, I suppose, on how people in this current time of trauma, you can't really call it sort of post-trauma at the moment, I think, because a lot of people are going through it. We're probably in that mid stage, but any ideas what people can be doing at the moment to work towards that sort of growth that might come after the trauma, whether it's, mindfulness, recognizing your thoughts, or whether there's any particular resources people can check out or read, or you mentioned strength-based parenting.
There is a lot of things that you can do. I was thinking, for example, there is this, I think this is a moment of pause for everybody. And I think in some way it's beautiful, because we are used to think about life outside and thinking about our goals outside. And this is a moment when everything is on hold. So at the same time, I think I told you that relationships was one of the ingredients for going through, post-traumatic growth. And you can develop relationships through this time, but also there is to know yourself. It's one of the most important ingredients, and I think they're important, like really useful tools. So, for example, I've been checking this tool called self-authoring. I don't know if you heard of it. Yeah.
Jordan Peterson, is it?
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that I would totally suggest to people that have the time is totally check that tool. So this tool is about thinking about yourself, your personality, the things you want to change, the things you want to achieve. It's not about like normal goals of success. It's about who you want to be. And I think that's one of the main ingredients of post-traumatic growth. You know, it will make you more resilient in a spiritual way. One of the main things is to connect with someone else, with the world. It's to get to know yourself. It's very Christian at the same time, and I'm not even Christian, but yeah.
I can see that.
I think there's important stuff there that gets repeated throughout all of the religions, right? Like this idea of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation in a way, right? Instead of setting a goal and being happy when you get to that goal, who do you want to be? And if every moment you're acting in that way, then the journey is just as enjoyable as the goal, right?
Yeah, it is. So I think there are many resources that people can check out. I'm trying, one of the things that I'm trying with Denise also is translating all the things that you guys have in English to make it available for people in Latin America and Spain. I think all the very important tools right now are in English. So we're trying to make it work and ask for permission to the people that are doing it in English and make it in Spanish so we can give this freely to everybody.
Something that we take for granted in the English-speaking world is just the availability of all this stuff to us, and also I think in this time a lot of these online resources, which used to have a small fee attached, a lot of them are becoming freely available now. I think as part of the sort of response to the COVID crisis. Things like also strength-based sort of assessment tools online. I know the VIA, Values and Action survey, there's a form of that that's always freely available, but Strength Profiler, which normally has some sort of fee attached, I know, or I saw an announcement recently that people can do that online. So a great way to learn about yourself and your strengths in particular, which can then lead on or provide sort of further insights to some of these questions that Pamela is referring to. Pamela, we're getting close to the end of our time, unfortunately. But before we go, is there anything that we haven't touched on or gotten a chance to discuss that you were hoping to sort of get out into the world?
Well, yeah, I was thinking right now, really, well, I know everything now is happening online, but I'm trying to think about people in Peru in general. Like the most part of Peru doesn't have really connection or doesn't really know how to learn from these resources. So, for example, I can make this available through it online, but I would love to discuss with you guys what kind of things we can do. Because I know you're in Australia, a lot of people, the vast majority of people in Australia do not only are accustomed to these kind of tools, but also they have the resources. And here, there is not the possibility. For example, I don't know if you heard, but in terms of the policies that, for example, my president did, is that Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, men could go out, and Thursdays, Tuesdays, and Saturdays, women could go out. There was like a measure to so people wouldn't go out. But the thing is, people didn't understand the measure. So they thought, oh, women can go out, so we can go out to do anything. People do not really get the message. So it, of course, good.
Why did they split the days by gender?
So that was a way, according to Vizcarra, our president, to be sure that less people would go out. and the available thing was to see a difference between people, between the gender. So the police would know you cannot go out, you're a man or you're a woman. It didn't really work.
Hilarious.
Yeah, interesting. It's the first time I've heard of anything like that, but yeah, maybe that'll start spreading.
You know, I think, you know, one of the things that, and again, Pamela will probably talk to you more after this. One of the things that I'm trying to be really conscious of is what we have here that other people don't have. And thank you so much, Pam, for coming in and, you know, opening up that perspective. Little things like we're not having resources translated in our language, right? We take that for granted so much. So much of pod psych and well-being research has been done in the West. Yeah. Simple things like, you know, our government's pretty stupid, and ScoMo is like flip-flopping all the time, but we have pretty good infrastructure here. Like things, even if the leadership doesn't always get it right, the people around the leadership seem to find a way, right? Whereas, you know, in other countries, they're splitting people by gender and giving them sanitary passes. So we do need to think about how can we support other places right now. And it's an important question to ask. So thanks, Pam.
Yeah, thanks for everything, Pam. It's been great. Really, really interesting conversation, and great to hear in particular about your statistics, but
that's okay.
Growth probably more for me. But yeah, it's all been really interesting. And thanks again for your time. Any final words before we sign off? No.
Not really. I think that's okay. I was just thinking about what we asked, what I really asked. I was trying to develop an answer in my head. Maybe I was trying, maybe could be, you know, I think, for example, doing this counseling session with nurses could help at the same time the parents, and the parents could, you know, do it like a little tree. And I think probably is not, I think the question each one of us could make himself or herself is, what can I do from where I am? So, for example, you guys that are in Australia or Belgium, I know you could totally get in touch with like someone like me or Denise in Chile or whoever in any part of the world and say, okay, how can I help? And, you know, maybe do counseling sessions or teach us something, so maybe we can translate that into Spanish or make it available to someone that could go, maybe, you know, health system workers to make available to other people or people that works in the government. I know there's like maybe thinking of making a change, a chain of change. Yeah, that's how I would say it.
I love how your brain works.
And I think it's a great perspective to have. We can all get caught up in, you know, what can't I do? It's all too big. It's beyond me. All these other experts are fixing it. But just tweaking that to what can I do? And there's hundreds of things that you've mentioned there, a couple, but plenty more as well. So that's, yeah, great thing to leave on. Thanks again, Pamela. Thanks, Griggy and Kesh. Good to see you guys. And everyone out there, please like, share and subscribe as you will. And until the next episode, you stay healthy, world.